Good evening and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host Gail Burke, and our special guest today, running for re-election for the umpteenth time, is City Councilor from Ward 3, Jim Latter. And I have to tell you, Jim, as you know, I'm in favor of term limits, but I have to tell you, from my perspective, and I've seen you work, you are clearly one of the best city councilors we have in the city of Beverly.
I appreciate that, Elliot. Thank you very much.
I agree.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Very good.
How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And we mentioned before we were sitting here that you guys have been nominated and awarded a national award for community television, and I think it's an award well deserved. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we actually won.
That's what I said.
Oh,
you were
I thought you
nominated
said
and awarded.
nominated. Oh, okay. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to do, and the show is a fun thing to do, and you've been on our show before.
I never miss it.
Okay. But, we always have a good time with whoever our guest is. We might ask hard questions, but...
Well, I think as people fragment how they get their news, I think shows and programs like this are more important, not less important, for people to be able to ask questions and get the word out. So thanks for doing it.
Very welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the first question, see how you feel about this one. What do you feel about sanctuary cities, and should Beverly become one? Because, as you know, the school committee decided the schools should be sanctuary.
Very good question. And first of all, I want to say to all of the students in Beverly schools that, we support you. We support educating you. Beverly is a welcoming community. Beverly is a community that has welcomed immigrants for centuries. And, immigrants have literally and figuratively built this city. That said, I don't think the city council should involve themselves in immigration policy issues. We have enough to focus on to make sure we're building adequate schools, to make sure we're funding enough school teachers for our kids in schools, to make sure that we're setting aside enough money in our rainy day fund to build a new police station as soon as this middle school project's done without delay, because we really need that. And that's the real work of working on the city council.
Could I interrupt you for a minute?
Sure.
I think we have to make a distinction between when you say Beverly has always welcomed immigrants, and I think most cities, towns in the country have welcomed immigrants. However, there's a difference between immigrants and illegal immigrants, and that's what the problem is. And I'm concerned because, according to the city, the school committee, they are welcoming every immigrant. And I question whether or not that is a wise thing to do, because many of these illegals coming in have not been vetted. There's no way to vet them. We don't know who they are, and sometimes we don't know where they are.
Well, and let's be clear that, undocumented populations in the country, it's an issue. It's an issue that we've wrestled with. I would, just as a private citizen, I would hope that the national government can figure out a way to deal with, an undocumented population and border security. And personally, I'd like to see some form of a path to citizenship, or at least permanent residency for those who have been here for a long period of time and lived according to our laws and paid taxes. That's way above my pay grade.
But you do have an opinion on it.
That said, I don't know if there's students in our community that are in our public schools, we'll educate them. I remember you asked me this question when I was on the school board 8 or 10 years ago. As for the sanctuary city, at least at the city council level, I do not believe anybody's proposing we change the policy of the city in any way, shape, or form from what we're currently doing today. And to me, that was my litmus test. If somebody wants to put forward an ordinance or an order and say, we are doing this a certain way, and we want to change how we're doing that to do something different, and you want to wrap the word sanctuary around it, at least that's a motion or an order that we can put forward, we can debate it, we can pass it, we can not pass it, or whatever. from what I've seen, there was no there in many of these sanctuary ordinances. You're not necessarily changing policy. You're saying we welcome people and throwing your shoulder out, patting yourself on the back. And is it really helping people that are here, whether they're documented or undocumented? I'm not sure.
Well, I think because I read the Salem News, and I know they're having a big problem in Salem. Salem, I believe, has a much larger immigrant population than Beverly does. However, I can see it happening, and now they have, the question is on the ballot, and whether or not they will become a sanctuary city.
It's funny, in a lot of my time, both on the school committee and the city council, most of us that are involved, even in local elected office, we identify with one party or another. Not all, but most. And so there's Democrats and there's Republicans, and I know I've worked with my colleagues on the city council to do our best to keep partisan politics away from municipal governance, because fault lines don't always fall. I remember one of the most contentious issues we had, and I actually forget what the issue was, but there was an order and a veto and an override, and the philosophical divide of those who were supportive and against it went all over the map. So I don't know if partisan politics lends itself to city governance, and I don't know if some of these big national level issues that are very partisan lend themselves to municipal governance. Unless there's a specific policy change that somebody's looking to implement, I don't see why we should get involved in it. And I felt that way about the Patriot Act. I felt that way about this. I felt this way. People are always coming forward and asking the city council to endorse this position or that position, or, we're not Cambridge. This is Beverly. We don't need to get ourselves, we have plenty to keep us busy right here in Beverly to get involved in these partisan issues that are important, and people feel one way or another, and strongly and rightfully, but I don't think it lends itself to good community governance to get dragged down into that, or up into that, whatever the case may be.
All right, let's change subjects and talk about what's going on Rantoul Street
Sure.
and Gloucester Crossing.
Absolutely.
Because that really affects the taxpayer, and when is it going to be done? One of the funny things is I'm hearing people complain about all the construction, but I'm thinking to myself, improvements take time, and when it's all said and done, it's probably going to be a benefit to the city.
That is true, but when you're living it,
it's tough.
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's important that we do what we can to mitigate. I mean, I was speaking to a constituent this morning about some traffic patterns around Dairy Queen, and he said something similar to what you just said. Hey, I get it. Progress takes time, it takes effort, it takes some pain. But he said, this neighborhood between the high school construction project, the 1A project, the middle school, they've been dealing with disruption for 6 or 7 years, and it's a long time.
So when's it going to get done?
They're doing the final paving. Bev1a.org will give you all the details you want. I know the mayor has sent out some reverse 911 calls. The final paving is going in now. The final striping. We're literally within a week to 10 days of the final paving, and then there's some sidewalk, some light work that'll continue. Hopefully we'll get it done before the cold weather hits. There may be some site work that gets pushed to next spring, but we're done. The entire bottom coat for the entire thing was done. It was extraordinarily complicated to get that whole Gloucester crossing.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Well, and coordinating it all with the train bridge turnstile reconstruction project, because that tied in with the whole thing. We needed that month of no trains on the bridge to redo the entire infrastructure. Much of the infrastructure under the tracks at Gloucester Crossing hadn't been replaced in over 100 years. So not only did they have to rip up the track, then they had to, a lot of the, water pipes and sewer pipes were done and then connected to what was there, and then they went to the other side and continued on. And this was our one opportunity to get a lot of that infrastructure done. So, that's done. The final paving's going in. Some of the road geometry is different. It will take some getting used to. I know some people.
Yeah, I'm not used to taking a left turn to get to Cabot
Street. And the bigger issue, and I was talking to Mike Collins about this morning, is coming northbound on 1A, right now there is a no left turn onto Rantoul. And we're working with the engineers. It's a situation where very few people need to take that left turn, and in a perfect world it would be great to just let that traffic flow through. The problem is that there are some that need to take that left turn, and if you don't realize it until you get there that you can't take that left, you don't know what to do.
I know that I had trouble getting to the post office.
Well,
Come down one street, no, detour, you can't go that way. Went down another street, no, it's closed off.
you know, we've done a lot of work, and I've done a lot of work. I'd like to give a shout out to Kevin Haratuni and the mayor's chief of staff. He has chaired this project, and he has reached out to, almost all of the abutters and many of the residences, and especially the businesses. We've really worked hard with the business community because these aren't huge profit businesses that can absorb a lot of lost business and keep going. These folks tighten their belt and sharpen their pencil, and it's a month-to-month thing for many of them. So we've worked with a lot of them to try to mitigate this to the extent that we can, and to try to let people know that business as usual is open on Rantoul Street.
What are you going to do about that historic building that had the Casa de Luca down by the train station? There was an article in the paper last week about that, and they don't know whether to keep it as an historic building, or if you tear it down, it's not going to be a historic area
that's private
anymore.
property. I believe it's owned by Windover or whatever Windover, Beverly Crossing. I don't know what, it's Windover, what corporate entity they are or they call it now. And this is, as I understand it, it's not in my ward, so if I misspeak a little bit, I apologize in advance, but I believe that there was other construction in that area, that they got some historical grants or tax relief or whatever the situation was. So they were prohibited from redeveloping that for a period of time until some certain things happened. I mean, right now it's private property. Right now, I believe the Historic Commission, if they want to tear it down, they can put a 1-year hold on it and ask them to revisit the situation and see if they can mitigate the loss of any historical structure. And then after that, it's private property. It's zoned to be developed a certain way, and the best of my knowledge, they're free to do it. If there were a way that could save the facades of those buildings into a construction, or at least some of them, boy, I'd be very amenable to giving them whatever help they could to do that. I don't know the engineering behind it, and that's I'm focused on projects more in my ward than up there, but I'm aware of it. I read the paper and it's discussed.
Now on Rantoul Street, we're seeing more and more apartment condos going up. And right now our school system is such that, okay, the high school was built so that it was the amount of kids that we had in there couldn't take any more. We're building so many apartments, there's going to be more school kids.
Well,
and
I've been tracking that from the very beginning. I've been tracking 4 properties: the Edward School, what they call the Enterprise Building, Depot Crossing, which is the condos on Pleasant Street, and Burnham Street Apartments, the one that are right behind my house. I figured that was a good representation of this kind of, quote, transit-oriented design. And they've added less than 1 school child per 30 units.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that include the affordable housing?
Yeah, all of these have affordable housing
Right.
components to them.
Right.
I know much of the affordable housing in the Burnham Street, which is right behind me, are 1-bedroom units that are going to people that
Commute back and forth to Boston or so?
No. These are people that are in our community that, for whatever reason, don't have children but still need an affordable housing. And I know a few people that live in those. So many of these affordable housing aspects, because they're 1- and 2-bedroom, aren't bringing a lot. And it's only about 10 to 12% of the units that are being built need to be affordable housing. There's a couple of things that we've set up a housing trust fund so that some of these transit-oriented buildings can be used, and then instead of building the affordable housing unit, and there's 2 schools of thought on this, but one of the things that they do is they can set the money aside and they can use that to add affordable units elsewhere, or if affordable units are rolling off, they can use that to keep those affordable units.
Now, is this Windover that's building all of these affordable housing because they?
No. Windover has built. Well, Windover did build some affordable housing in my ward.
One of the schools.
That was something completely different, and those weren't affordable housing. These are all market rate units. There's an affordable housing complement to that, and there may be some other ways to handle that. I know that they're looking at building some 60 some odd units of affordable housing, and some of these developments can take what they're obliged to build as affordable housing units, donate to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and use that to help finance some other affordable housing. Because there's a couple of things at play here. 3 things, actually. One, and I've talked to the mayor and I've talked to the planning director, is we need to stop looking at project by project housing units and seeing if it's appropriate for the site. And I've heard from a lot of the people that you've heard from that people want to know, can we absorb this as a community? Not, is this 100 units good here or is that 80 units good there? Because you can get lost in the weeds and not see the forest through the trees. I think it's important, and I think we are at the point that we need to start looking at it community-wide. And we need to say, you know, the sense I've gotten is people say, let's digest what's in the pipeline before we put more in the pipeline. Let's see where we're at. And that's one of the reasons I've really been tracking the school children in those 4 units, because I really want to get a sense, as these other units come online, is that really going to impact our school populations? The data that I'm seeing now says that that's still more focused, young couples, couples without children, couples with preschool age children, and people that have pushed their kids through school and are looking to downsize or right size. I think one of the things that is driving our school population is that I think that we had a housing trough for a period of time. I think a lot of people would have been amenable to downsizing, but the market wasn't good for them. And as the markets come back, I think a lot of people have taken advantage of that and sold to young families. And I think that's a bigger driver to our school-age children than building these apartments. That said, there's a lot going on, and I think we really need to push back and absorb what we have before we do the kinds of things, especially zoning. People are building what they can by right, but especially before we look into zoning changes or anything that might incentivize this in other areas of the city, I think we need to digest what we have before we go any further.
That sounds reasonable.
Boy, was that a run-on sentence, huh?
It was. That was a long sentence.
Are we done yet? One of the things that people have said to me, and this is totally changing the subject, driving down Cabot Street, and they see the Black Lives Matter sign on one of the churches.
Yep.
And you drive a little further, and then you see we welcome all kinds of immigrants.
Yep.
Now, I know they're kind of 2 separate things, but I don't quite understand, and I don't know whether there's any ordinance. The Black Lives Matter flag really is impacting a lot of people. And I spoke to one of the people who attends that church, and I said, how did that happen? Were you in favor of it? No, I wasn't.
Yep.
But they pushed it.
Well, they should talk to the leadership of their church. I mean,
But does the city have any hand in
it is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's considered political speech, and it's extraordinarily difficult.
Well,
to
where do you
limit
draw the
political
line?
speech.
Now, to me, that's hate speech. Because Black Lives Matter, that whole group, are the ones that go around to different communities and start riots. They've been beating it. They've been photographed, filmed, and a lot of research has gone into finding out where their funding is coming from, and they go from communities that are having a racial problem, and they incentivize it to make it worse.
Yeah. I would get in touch with the management of that church. I mean, I get in touch with the folks that are there and talk to them
But as a
about
city,
it.
do we want to encourage that kind of thing?
I don't think we encourage or discourage. I mean, it's. I don't believe that there's an ordinance that's going to, limit people's ability
Well, that's free
to put
speech.
forward to,
Yeah.
political speech.
What kind of issues are coming up in Ward 3 that you would like to discuss?
Well, I think we've talked, to a lot of them right now. We've talked about road construction. We've talked about, dealing with that. We've talked about other construction projects, the middle school. Whether you were for or against the middle school, it's my obligation to the taxpayer to make sure that that school is built in a cost-effective manner, that it is finished on time, that our kids have that school to move into on time. And right now we're on time and on budget.
You're on budget?
What's going to happen with Briscoe?
We will lead into that. I think that's an open question. That's a great question.
I have a suggestion.
I'm sure you do. But right now we will go through a process. It will be surplus by the school committee, and at that point it will become a property that's owned by the city of Beverly, and it will be discharged as many of our other retired schools have been, or maybe there'll be a different way to deal with it. But what's your idea?
My suggestion would be moving City Hall there and moving the police station in that area. You've got a very big building. You've got a nice hall for city council meetings and public hearings. It's too big for City Hall as it is, but all other city offices could go in there. It's a great building.
The city and the city's purchasing director, who's as straight a shooter as there is in City Hall, did a financial study of how to best use that building. And it does not work as a police station. The cost to retrofit a police station in that
that's what I
building
was just gonna ask you.
would cost more
Yeah.
than building a police station from scratch. Now, what it takes to build a police station today, and especially post 9/11, is a lot different than what it was once upon a time. It's not you build a building and put some concrete rooms in
So
the
you
back.
can bring all the city offices in there, even public works offices. There's a lot of land there. It's a nice building.
It's about 8 acres.
And the city hall and the police station that we have now, I don't have to tell you, both of them are,
The police station needs to be redone.
Right.
There's some thought that if the police move out of City Hall, it does open up a lot of square footage where the police station is to move some city offices. There's also been some talk does City Hall get redeveloped if we were to do something like that? And one other thing I've heard is some dedicated senior housing.
okay.
Or some 55-plus housing, or something more than just more apartments for everybody.
Now, would that involve a private
Yes.
developer to come
Yeah,
in?
I would anticipate that if that were to happen.
Because I would think that the cost of the city doing it would
Yeah,
be
the cities, we're not
cost-prohibitive.
that's not the business that we're in.
I've got other ideas for paying for the cost of it, but we don't have time for that right now. But what we do have
The
time.
answer is it's an open question. There have been some studies that have looked at it. I look at the McKay School as a particular example, and some people wanted to really develop that much larger than it was. Some people wanted to tear it down and put in single-family homes. I think we got a good mix. I think we got something that was smaller in scale, that fit into that neighborhood than the biggest ones that were proposed, that would have given the city the most money. We would have gotten more in purchase price and more in long-term tax revenue if we'd gone with the biggest bid that came in for the McKay School. But I worked hard to keep that, in as much in scale with the neighborhood as I could. So I anticipate a process, something like that, would happen at Briscoe. We're probably a couple of years away from making those final decisions, though.
All right, you have just a couple of minutes left to tell everybody why they should re-elect you for Councilor of Ward 3.
Thanks. Jim Latta, Ward 3 City Councilor. I've been your ward councilor for 8 years and on the school committee for 4 years before that. I found it very rewarding to serve the people. I think I've worked hard to be responsive to people and to answer their questions and their concerns and to bring them up in a timely fashion. I really enjoy the work. I think that there's a couple of big projects that are going on. I think the middle school in finishing this road project and what happens with Briscoe are 3 of the big things that are going to happen in our ward in the next couple of years, and they're work that I'm engaged in, I'm in the middle of, and I love the opportunity to get at least one more term and wrap that stuff up.
Sounds good.
And I'd appreciate your vote on Tuesday, November 7th, right?
It's something like that.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Tuesday,
It
November
probably is.
7th.
It probably is, yeah.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will let me what for about it.
Well, that's the first Tuesday in November.
The first
Yeah,
Tuesday
yeah.
in November.
And the most important thing is to get out and vote.
And that's very
Absolutely,
important.
yeah.
And I think I want a lot of people to pay attention to the at-large races. The mayor's race is uncontested this year, but we have 6 great people running for council at large, and they really deserve your time, and they really deserve your consideration. And I've enjoyed serving with some of the people that are running. I've enjoyed meeting the new people that are running, and it takes a lot to put yourself out there and to run for public office. So please, not only in my race, but in that at-large race, pay attention to who's running and make an informed decision. Just get to the polls on election day. It's really important. If there's one way you can pay people back for getting engaged in public service, it's going out to vote. So don't forget to vote.
And I would like to add that BevCam every year, every election year, does interviews with all of the candidates. And I would urge the public to watch these interviews. We are trying to do as many of the interviews on our own as well. So it's a little time prohibitive for some people, so we won't be able to get everybody on. We're trying to concentrate on people who are running with some opposition.
Yep.
And so we hope you'll watch. We thank you, Jim, for coming on. We appreciate it. And I know you enjoy coming on, so we'll invite you again.
I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.